Every morning you wake up and hand your peace to someone else. Your boss, your bank account, the algorithm, the opinion of people you don't even respect. And the strangest part, you do it willingly. You've been trained to believe that happiness lives somewhere outside you, guarded by circumstances you can't control. Seneca knew something different. He discovered 7 rules that make you unshakable, but he buried them in letters most people never read. What you're about to learn isn't just philosophy. It's the operating system for a life that can't be broken. ***, welcome to Stoic Valor. This isn't a channel for people who want to feel good for 10 minutes. This is for the ones who are tired of being fragile, tired of bleeding every time life shows its teeth. We don't do surface-level wisdom here. We go deep, we go real, and we don't stop until something inside you transforms. If that's what you came for, you're in the right place. Picture Seneca in his final hours. Nero, the emperor he once mentored, has ordered his death. The soldiers are coming. Most men would be screaming, bargaining, collapsing. Seneca is calm, not because he wants to die, but because he spent decades training for this exact moment. He understood something that most people never grasp in their entire lives. Your happiness isn't fragile because life is hard. It's fragile because you built it on foundations that were never meant to hold weight. Think about the last time something small ruined your entire day. A comment from a coworker, a text that didn't come, traffic, your mood collapsed like a house of cards, and you probably blamed the circumstance. But the Stoics would tell you something that sounds harsh at first. The circumstance didn't break you. Your illusion of control broke you. You believed you were supposed to control things you were never meant to control. And that belief is the crack in your foundation that makes everything crumble. Here's what Seneca wrote in his letters. Words that most people read but never really absorb. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Read that again. Most of your pain isn't even real. It's projected. It's the horror movie your mind plays on repeat about what might happen, what could go wrong, what people might think. You're not living in reality. You're living in a nightmare. You're creating frame by frame. And the first rule to guard your happiness is brutally simple. Stop arguing with reality. This doesn't mean become passive. It doesn't mean roll over and accept everything. It means something far more powerful. It means you stop wasting energy on the immovable and you pour everything into what actually responds to your effort. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of the most influential philosophers in history, divided the entire universe into 2 categories: things you control and things you don't. He said the path to freedom, real freedom, starts with knowing the difference. You don't control what happens to you. You control what you do with what happens to you. You don't control what people say. You control how you interpret what they say. You don't control outcomes. You control effort, intention, response. And when you finally truly accept this, something shifts. The world stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a gym. Every obstacle becomes a weight you can lift to get stronger. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think Stoicism is about not caring, about becoming cold and detached. That's not what the Stoics taught. Marcus Aurelius loved his children deeply. Seneca cherished his friends. Epictetus cared about his students. The difference is they didn't make their happiness dependent on circumstances staying perfect. They loved fiercely and held loosely. They understood that attachment to permanence in an impermanent world is the recipe for constant suffering. Ryan Holiday writes about this in The Obstacle is the Way, showing how modern leaders and athletes use this ancient principle to turn breakdowns into breakthroughs. But the core insight comes from Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire while reminding himself daily. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your obstacles aren't interruptions to your path. They are your path. The resistance is where you build strength. The difficulty is where you forge character. Now hold that thought, because what I'm about to share changes everything. The second rule Seneca embedded in his teachings is this. Your mind is a garden, and you've been letting anyone plant anything they want in it. Every advertisement, every comparison, every fear-based news story, every toxic conversation, they're all seeds, and they're all growing into the forest you're lost in right now. Seneca was obsessed with the idea of custody of attention. He asked a question that sounds simple but cuts deep. What are you allowing into your mind? In his essay on the shortness of life, Seneca writes with urgency that feels almost angry. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. He's not talking about time management tips. He's talking about the fact that you're pouring your life force into things that don't matter, and then wondering why you feel empty. The third rule builds on this. Seneca says you must rehearse loss before it happens. This sounds dark, maybe even morbid, but it's one of the most practical tools the Stoics developed. It's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Every morning, Seneca would imagine losing everything: his wealth, his status, his friends, his life. Not to make himself miserable, but to make himself free. Because when you've already faced the worst in your mind, reality loses its power to shatter you. Most people do the opposite. They avoid thinking about anything negative. They distract, they numb, they pretend everything will always be fine. And then when loss comes, and it always comes, they're completely unprepared. They fall apart. But if you practice loss, if you sit with impermanence, something paradoxical happens. You start enjoying what you have more deeply because you know it's temporary. Your relationships get richer. Your gratitude becomes real. Your happiness stops being this fragile thing that needs perfect conditions and becomes something that exists, regardless of conditions. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits when he discusses the difference between being in motion and taking action. Most people stay busy to avoid confronting what really matters. They fill their calendars so they don't have to face the fact that they're building a life they don't actually want. The Stoics would say that's not productivity, that's cowardice. The fourth rule is about ruthless honesty with yourself. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is ours, except time, and yet you spend it like it's infinite. On people who drain you, on work that doesn't matter, on worries that never materialize." Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You already know most of this. Somewhere deep inside, you know you're giving your power away. You know you're living reactively instead of intentionally. You know you're building your happiness on sand. But knowing and doing are separated by a canyon most people never cross. The Stoics didn't just write pretty philosophy. They built daily practices, rituals, mental frameworks that turned philosophy into armor. And that's where we're going next. But knowing this changes nothing if you don't know how to apply it. And the way you apply it is not what you think. So how do you actually do this? How do you take these principles and forge them into something that protects you when your world is collapsing? Let me show you exactly what the Stoics did and what you can start doing tonight. Because there's a reason Marcus Aurelius remained sane while running an empire during a plague, and there's a reason Seneca could face death with steady hands. They had a system, not motivation. A system. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning. Before you check your phone, before the world floods in with its demands and distractions, you sit in silence for 3 minutes. Just 3. And you ask yourself one question Seneca asked every single morning. What am I defending today? Not what are you doing. What are you defending? Your peace, your integrity, your standards, your time. Because the world will try to take all of it. And if you don't know what you're guarding, you'll hand it over without a fight. This is the morning practice that changed everything for the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius would wake before dawn, and the first thing he'd do is remind himself of his principles. He'd literally talk to himself, writing in his journal things like, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Does that sound negative? It's not. It's preparation. He's not being pessimistic. He's being realistic. He's mentally rehearsing difficulty so that when it shows up, he's not surprised. He's ready. Here's what this looks like in your life right now. You know you have a difficult conversation coming today. Maybe with your boss, your partner, someone who triggers you. Most people avoid thinking about it, and then when the moment comes, they react from emotion. They say things they regret. They collapse or explode. But if you're following the Stoic system, you've already been there in your mind. You've already visualized them saying the worst thing they could say. You've already felt the emotional charge and decided how you want to respond. Not react, respond. And when the moment actually happens, you're calm, centered, unshakable. The fifth rule Seneca teaches is this: judge yourself by your effort, not your outcomes. This is where most people bleed energy and lose their minds. You work hard on a project, and it fails. You pour your heart into a relationship, and it ends. You do everything right, and life still delivers pain. And you feel like it means something about you, like you failed. But the Stoics would tell you that's a fundamental misunderstanding of how the universe works. You don't control outcomes. You never did. Thinking you do is like being angry at the rain for falling. Let me give you a concrete practice for this. Every evening Seneca did what he called the daily review. Before sleep, he'd examine his day with the precision of a surgeon. Not to beat himself up, but to learn. He'd ask 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my principles? How can I improve tomorrow? This isn't therapy. This isn't journaling your feelings. This is quality control for your character. You're literally debugging your operating system every single night. Mark Manson writes, in the subtle art that we have limited fucks to give, so we better choose carefully what we give them to. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. The 6th rule is about subtraction, not addition. Seneca said, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. You think you need to do more, achieve more, become more. But what if the path to happiness is doing less, caring about less, being less scattered? What if the problem isn't that you're not enough, but that you're trying to be everything? Here's a practice you can implement immediately. Tonight, take out a piece of paper. Write down everything you're currently worried about. Everything you're trying to control, everything that's taking your energy. Be honest, all of it. Your career, your relationships, your body, your reputation, your future. Now draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write what you actually control. On the right side, write what you don't. And here's the brutal part. Everything on the right side, you have to release. Not ignore, release. You stop bleeding energy into it. You stop letting it determine your peace. Most people do this exercise and realize, 90% of what they worry about is on the right side. Things they cannot control, and they've been destroying themselves trying to control the uncontrollable, while neglecting the small number of things they actually have power over. Your effort, your response, your choices, your character, that's it. That's the kingdom you rule. And when you finally focus all your power on that kingdom, instead of trying to control the entire world, you become formidable. But there's a problem most people don't see coming. You can know all of this intellectually and still fall apart when tested. Because knowing and embodying are different. The seventh rule is the one Seneca practiced most intensely, and it's the hardest to accept. Voluntary discomfort. He would periodically live like he'd lost everything. Sleeping on the floor, eating simple food, wearing plain clothes, living with minimal possessions. His friends thought he was crazy. He was rich, powerful. Why would he choose discomfort? Because he was training. He was inoculating himself against the fear of loss. He was proving to himself that he could be happy with nothing, which meant nothing could be taken from him. Ryan Holiday calls this practice turning obstacles into opportunity, but it goes deeper. It's about deliberately creating obstacles to build strength. It's about not waiting for life to test you, but testing yourself first. Because when you've already been to the edge voluntarily, being forced there by circumstance doesn't break you. Here's how you practice this. Once a week, choose voluntary discomfort. Fast for a day. Take a cold shower. Sleep on the floor. Leave your phone off for 24 hours. Sit with boredom without reaching for a distraction. Do something that's hard but not harmful. And while you're doing it, remind yourself of Epictetus' teaching. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. You're not doing this to impress anyone. You're doing this to become someone who can't be broken now. What I'm about to share is counterintuitive, but it's essential. The Stoics weren't trying to eliminate emotion. They were trying to eliminate being controlled by emotion. There's a massive difference. Marcus Aurelius felt anger, grief, frustration, fear. He just didn't let those feelings make his decisions. He felt them, acknowledged them, and then chose his response based on his principles, not his feelings. This is emotional sovereignty. This is what separates people who fall apart from people who stand firm. If this is hitting different, if you're feeling something shift inside you right now, then subscribe to Stoic Valor, because we're not building an audience here. We're building a brotherhood of people who refuse to live on autopilot. We're just getting started, and what we're about to explore in the next section will show you that this isn't just ancient philosophy. This works today. In the real world, when everything is falling apart, let me show you exactly how. But does this actually work in the real world, when everything is falling apart? When you're not an emperor or a philosopher, but a regular person facing impossible situations? Let me show you what happens when these principles collide with modern chaos. Because theory is beautiful, but reality is where philosophy either dies or becomes immortal. There was a man I'll call David, tech executive, successful by every external measure. And then, in the span of 6 months, everything detonated. His company collapsed. His marriage ended. His father died. He told me later that he remembers standing in his empty apartment, the furniture repossessed, and feeling nothing. Not sadness, not anger, nothing. Just a void where his identity used to be, because his entire sense of self was built on things outside his control. And when those things vanished, so did he. Here's what most people do in that moment. They spiral. They blame, they numb. They spend years trying to get back what they lost, building the exact same fragile foundation that already collapsed once. David did something different. He found Marcus Aurelius, not in a classroom, but in a free PDF at 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep. And he read this line: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He said it felt like being slapped awake. He started doing the morning practice. 3 minutes of silence, asking what he was defending today. At first he had nothing to defend. No job, no marriage, no reputation. Just himself, just his character, just his response to what had happened. And slowly, something rebuilt. Not the external life. That was gone. But something internal. Something that didn't need permission from circumstances to exist. 6 months later, he told me, "I lost everything, and it saved my life. Because everything I lost wasn't mine. It was on loan, and I was living in terror of the repo man." That's the Stoic reframe. What you call loss, they would call liberation. Now contrast this with another case. A woman who went through something similar. Successful career, ended abruptly. Long relationship, collapsed. And she took the other path. She made it her identity. She became the victim of her circumstances. Every conversation, every social media post, every thought was about what was done to her, how unfair it was, how she didn't deserve it. And 5 years later, nothing had changed. She was still living in the wreckage, not because the situation was worse than David's, but because she never released the need to control the past. Same situation, 2 completely different outcomes. The difference, one thing, David accepted what he couldn't change and poured all his energy into what he could. She refused to accept and bled her power trying to rewrite history. The Stoics would say only one of them was free. Here's what Ryan Holiday documents in The Obstacle is the Way. Every single person who transforms adversity into advantage does the same thing. They stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That shift in question changes everything. Let me give you another case, more specific. An athlete, collegiate level, injury ends his career before it really starts. Torn ACL, botched surgery, permanent damage. His entire identity was built on being an athlete. His friends, his routine, his future, all organized around a body that no longer worked the way he needed it to. He told me the darkest part wasn't the physical pain. It was waking up every morning and not knowing who he was anymore. The person he'd been training to become his entire life was now impossible. Here's where the Stoic principle of dichotomy of control becomes surgical in its precision. He couldn't control his knee. He couldn't control the injury. He couldn't control the past. But he could control what he did next. He started reading Epictetus, specifically and he found this passage. Demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. It sounds like surrender. It's not, it's strategic acceptance. He stopped fighting reality and started working with it. He couldn't be a professional athlete, so he became a coach. He poured everything he learned from training into helping others. And he told me something profound. I'm happier now than I ever was when I could play. Because when I was playing, I was terrified every single day of losing it. Now I have nothing to lose. I already lost it, and I'm free. That's the paradox the Stoics understood. The thing you're most afraid of losing is the thing that's enslaving you. Now let's talk about betrayal, because that's where most people's philosophy shatters. A man builds a business with his best friend, 10 years of partnership, and he discovers his partner has been stealing, lying, setting up to take everything. The legal battle destroys the business. The friendship is obliterated. The financial damage takes years to recover from. But the emotional damage, that's where most people never come back. They become bitter, cynical, unable to trust. He went the Stoic route, not because he was enlightened, but because he was desperate. He started practicing Seneca's evening review. Every night, he'd ask himself, where did I give my power away today? And he kept finding the same answer. To anger, to resentment, to imaginary arguments with his former partner. He was giving this person who betrayed him free rent in his mind, 24 hours a day. Seneca's words cut through the noise. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured. So he made a decision. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but release. He stopped carrying the poison. He accepted that betrayal happened, that people sometimes reveal themselves in devastating ways, and that holding on to the anger was choosing to betray himself every single day. James Clear writes about this in Atomic Habits when he talks about identity-based change. You don't change by changing what you do. You change by changing who you are. This man stopped being the person who was betrayed, and became the person who doesn't let circumstances define him. One more case, because this one shows the full spectrum. A single mother, working 2 jobs, kid gets sick, serious illness, medical bills pile up. She loses one job because she has to miss work for hospital visits. Eviction notice comes, objectively, catastrophically hard. No philosophy seminar is solving the practical reality of that situation. But here's what she did. She found Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. club, which introduced her to Stoic principles through a modern lens. She couldn't control the illness. She couldn't control the bills. She couldn't control the eviction. But she could control her 5 to 6 a.m. hour. Every single morning, while her daughter slept, she invested 1 hour in herself. Reading, planning, applying for new positions, learning new skills. Not because it was going to fix everything immediately, but because it was the 1 hour a day where she had agency, where she wasn't a victim of circumstances, but an architect of her future. Marcus Aurelius called this confining yourself to the present, not ignoring the future, but not letting the weight of it paralyze you now. 18 months later, better job, stable housing, daughter in remission. But she told me the transformation wasn't external. It was internal, she said. I learned I can handle anything. Not because I'm strong, but because I get to choose my response. And that choice is the only thing that can't be taken from me. That's pure epic. That's the heart of Stoicism. Not that bad things won't happen, but that your agency, your choice, your response, that's the untouchable core. These aren't special people. They're people who made one decision, the same decision you can make right now. They stopped waiting for circumstances to give them permission to be okay. They stopped building their happiness on foundations that could be shaken. They started building it on the one thing that can't be taken. Their character, their response, their principles. So the question becomes, are you ready to make that same decision? Because everything changes after this. Remember what we started with, the idea that every morning you wake up and hand your peace to someone else? Now you understand why that's not just a poetic observation. It's a diagnosis. You've been living like your happiness is something the world gives you when it's in a good mood. And the world has taught you, over and over, that it's not in a good mood very often, But the Stoics discovered the truth that every spiritual tradition eventually arrives at. Happiness isn't found, it's chosen, and it's chosen in moments that feel impossible. Let me bring this full circle. The 7 rules Seneca embedded in his teachings aren't just strategies. They're a complete restructuring of how you see reality. Stop arguing with what is, guard what enters your mind. Rehearse loss before it happens. Be ruthlessly honest with yourself. Judge yourself by effort, not outcomes. Subtract instead of adding. Choose voluntary discomfort. These aren't separate principles. They're one unified practice. They're how you build a self that doesn't collapse when the world gets hard. But here's the part most people don't want to hear. Knowing this changes nothing. You can watch this video, feel inspired, nod along, and tomorrow you'll be exactly the same. Because inspiration without implementation is just entertainment. And the Stoics weren't entertainers. They were engineers of the human spirit. They built practices, daily rituals, mental frameworks that turned philosophy into transformation. So the real question isn't whether this is true. You already know it is. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Here's what you need to ask yourself right now. And I mean right now. Before you scroll away and let this moment dissolve into the noise of your day, are you tired yet? Are you tired of being fragile? Are you tired of waking up anxious about things you can't control? Are you tired of building your life on foundations that keep collapsing? Are you tired of being held hostage by circumstances? By other people's opinions? By outcomes you were never meant to control? Because if you're not tired yet, you'll keep doing what you're doing. And that's okay. Some people need more pain before they're ready to change. But if you are tired, if something inside you is finally ready to stop bleeding, then here's what happens next. You make one decision, not 7-1. You decide that starting tomorrow morning, you're going to defend your peace like your life depends on it. Because it does. Not your biological life, but the quality of your life. The texture of your existence, the difference between surviving and actually living. You're going to wake up, and before the world floods in, you're going to ask yourself, what am I defending today? Let me paint 2 futures for you, both completely possible, both starting from this exact moment. Future 1, you watch this video, you feel something. Maybe you even tell someone about it. And then life happens. You get busy. You forget. The old patterns reassert themselves because they're comfortable. They're familiar. Even if they're destroying you. 6 months from now, you're in the same place. Different circumstances, same internal chaos. Still fragile, still bleeding. Still wondering why happiness feels so impossible. And you'll watch another video, read another book, look for another answer. Not realizing the answer isn't more information, it's implementation. Future 2, you watch this video, and you do something different. Tonight, before you sleep, you do Seneca's evening review. You ask yourself the 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my principles? How can I improve tomorrow? And tomorrow morning, you wake up and do the 3-minute practice. You sit in silence and you ask what you're defending. And it feels awkward, maybe even stupid, but you do it anyway. And the next day, and the next, not perfectly. The Stoics never demanded perfection. They demanded practice. And slowly, something shifts. Not in your circumstances. Maybe your circumstances get worse. But something in you becomes solid. You notice you don't collapse as ice. You notice you can sit with discomfort without immediately reaching for a distraction. You notice you're not giving your power away as much. You're not as reactive, not as fragile, not as controlled by things outside you. And 6 months from now, you're a different person. Not because your life is perfect, but because you're no longer demanding that it be perfect in order for you to be okay. Here's the challenge I'm giving you. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when you have more time. Tonight, before you close this video, do one thing. Take out your phone, open your notes, and write down one principle from this video that hit you hardest. Just one. And under it, write one way you're going to practice it tomorrow. Specific. Concrete. Not I'm going to be more stoic, but tomorrow morning, I'm going to sit in silence for 3 minutes and ask what I'm defending. That level of specific. Because the Stoics understood something about human nature that modern psychology is only now confirming. Intention without action is just wishful thinking. You don't think your way into a new way of living. You live your way into a new way of thinking. You practice until the practice becomes you. Marcus Aurelius didn't write Meditations to publish it. He wrote it as a daily practice, reminding himself of principles he kept forgetting. Because he was human, he struggled. He faced the same internal battles you face. The difference is, he didn't wait to feel like it. He practiced anyway. If you want to continue this journey, if you're ready to build a philosophy that can't be shaken, subscribe to Stoic Valor. We're not here for views. We're here for the few who are serious about this. Every video we create is designed to give you tools, not just ideas. Practices, not just inspiration. We're building something rare here. A community of people who understand that real strength isn't loud, it's quiet, it's consistent. It's waking up every day and choosing your response instead of being controlled by your reactions. Drop a comment telling me, which of these 7 rules hit you hardest? What's the one thing you're committing to apply? Your answer might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, someone who's struggling, someone who's searching, send them this video. Philosophy isn't meant to be hoarded, it's meant to be shared. Not to fix people, but to remind them they have the tools to fix themselves. Here's what Seneca wrote in his final letter before his death. Knowing he had hours left, and choosing to spend those hours teaching, the soul should know whither it is going and whence it came, what is good for it and what is evil, what it seeks and what it avoids, and what is that reason which distinguishes between the desirable and the undesirable, and thereby tames the madness of our desires and calms the violence of our fears. Read that slowly. Your soul should know where it's going. Not hope, not wish, no. And the only way to know is to choose, to decide, to commit. Not to perfection, but to practice. Not to never falling, but to always getting back up. Not to controlling the world, but to mastering yourself. That's the path. That's what the Stoics walked. That's what they're inviting you to walk. You're at a fork right now. One path leads back to the same patterns, the same fragility, the same suffering. The other path leads somewhere harder, but infinitely more free. The Stoics can't walk it for you. I can't walk it for you. Only you can make that choice. And you make it not once, but every single morning when you wake up and decide what you're defending. Epictetus, who knew what it meant to have everything taken from him, who lived as a slave before he lived as a free man, said this: "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. You want happiness? Stop chasing it in places it doesn't live. It doesn't live in circumstances. It doesn't live in other people's approval. It doesn't live in outcomes. It lives in one place. Your response? Your choice. Your character? That's the kingdom you rule. That's where your power lives. That's where your freedom waits. This is where it starts. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when things get easier. Now, this moment. This decision." The Stoics are reaching across 2,000 years, not to give you answers, but to remind you that you already have everything you need. You just forgot. So remember, and then practice, and then become. That's the path. See you in the next one.